Hello, everybody. Hope you're having a wonderful day today. My name is Steve. Thank you so much for stopping by my channel. I am joined again by my wife, Lindsay, and we are about to react to something that has been recommended so many times in the comments section. I've actually seen this recommended probably, I don't know, probably 50 times or so, even before you came along. And since you've come along, I've seen the recommendations for this even more. So this is something that a lot of people were really wanting us to check out. And I think this is really interesting. Visit America without leaving Britain, the JFK Memorial. And so when I was looking at the description, as you'll see down here, in a quarter of England is a slice of U.S. territory. That's right. A part of Britain is owned by the United States, and you can visit it without a passport or visa.
Wait,
and
what?
It's all to do with slain President John F. Kennedy. Now, my thing is,
how are you going to get to it, though?
yeah, unless you can fly directly into this spot, how are you going to actually get here without a visa? But I think it's just technically you could, because it's supposedly owned by the U.S., which is really weird to think that there is a piece of Britain that is officially owned by the U.S.? I have no idea, but I think this would be interesting.
Yeah. I have no clue what it is or why.
I know it's some sort of JFK Memorial, but that's another thing. Like, it's surprising that JFK Memorial would be in the UK.
Yeah,
right?
I'm
Like,
not sure really why that is.
what exactly is the importance of JFK to Britain? Like, I understand the importance of JFK to people in America,
Right.
but what exactly did JFK represent to the British people? I don't quite understand, because it was well after World War II. You know, what was happening during this time period that he was around for him to be of importance? Let us know, guys, in the comments.
Or maybe the video will.
Maybe he'll say what that, the reason for that in here. But I think this will be interesting.
All right.
So anyways, guys, enough rambling from us. Let's go ahead and check out Visit America Without Leaving Britain, the JFK Memorial.
If I was to tell you that you can visit the United States without leaving England, you might think that I'm not quite the full ship.
Oh, they don't need a visa to come
Okay, not
here.
people coming from here.
Yeah, okay. That makes more sense. Okay, so you guys don't need a visa to go to this place that's owned by the U.S. within Britain. Okay, that makes more sense. Okay.
Chilling. But it's perfectly true. If
That's
you
wild.
step through this wooden gate deep in the English countryside, you
beautiful.
magically enter sovereign American territory. And you don't need a passport or a visa to do so, or to be questioned by immigration officials.
That's wild, man.
Legally, once through the gate, you are on U.S. soil. The
How?
reason for this interesting
That is
little
weird.
anomaly is John F. Kennedy. On the 22nd of November 1963, President Kennedy was brutally and publicly slain in Dealey Plaza, Dallas, Texas. With Kennedy died the hopes and dreams of not only many Americans, but of many people all over the world. Kennedy was a much adored, revered, and respected international statesman who appeared to have been doing much to change America and the world for the better, but was cut down in the prime of his life.
Freedom of information is a fundamental human right and the touchstone of all the freedoms to which the United Nations is consecrated. We welcome the view of others. We seek a free flow of information across national boundaries and oceans, across iron curtains and stone walls. We are not afraid to entrust the American people with unpleasant facts, foreign ideas, alien philosophies, and competitive values. For a nation that is afraid to let its people judge the truth and falsehood in an open market is a nation that is afraid of its people.
Many people believe
Wow.
It shouldn't, I guess, but it really surprises me to see other countries, how impacted they were in their newspapers and stuff.
Yeah.
Why? But I mean, I guess it makes sense because the U.S. has always been, on the world stage. And
Not always.
Well, not always.
But in modern times.
Modern
Yeah.
times. And so
Right.
it would be a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
And granted, we weren't alive then. So
No.
we
And I think that's why it's kind of a little shocking to us because we weren't
We
around.
didn't feel it happen like
right.
the rest of the world at the time.
What is this? What was this anniversary? Was this the 60th? I believe this was the 60th anniversary this year.
Yeah.
It was 63, right? I believe it was 63, if I'm not mistaken. Wow. Yeah, I mean, he was a very unifying figure from what I've seen, but I didn't know that was
global.
I didn't know that was global. I thought that was just, I thought that was just mainly a U.S. thing. I didn't know that, him as our president was was revered around the world like that. Although I did expect it would JFK, out of all presidents modern times, I would expect he would maybe be that figure that would represent that globally.
I guess
in a way.
one reason it's shocking too is because it's much easier nowadays for us to get access to news and events of other countries and cultures. So I guess I'm just a little surprised that in the early 60s it was so
no internet. Like just like you're the news you're getting comes through radio and TV at that point, and to think that other countries, Britain in this case,
publicized things outside there
that much. To where, let us know, guys, anyone who was around when JFK, was old enough, to remember JFK. If you're in the UK or even in other parts of the world, what did he signify? Some sort of unity amongst people globally or something? Like, what was it that made him so important to the British people, right? That's what I kind of want to understand, because coming from an American that wasn't around at the time, I have no idea what that looked like to other people, in other words.
That Kennedy's assassination marked a sea change in American politics, and that if he and his brother, Robert F. Kennedy, who was also cruelly assassinated in 1968 when he was running for president, if both had lived, America and the world might today be very different places.
Oh, there's no doubt in my mind. Like, I've especially, in the last year or so, I've took a look into Robert Kennedy quite a bit. And he was it's amazing to think of, there are a handful of people that, died too young or were killed or whatever, that you realize that if they had been able to live and, in this case, become president, which he looked like he was probably on the path to become president at that point in he was assassinated in 1968. You got to wonder, like, looking at who he was, and if you believe he was real and what his words and his vision, and I believe he was genuine, and you got to wonder, where would our country be at right now? And we're so tied together, especially our allies, the UK and the US and other European nations, and, Australia and Canada. These English-speaking countries, Western nations, are pretty tied together. And so what happens in one affects the other, to certain different extents, but still it affects the others. And you got to wonder what would happen kind of on a global stage if someone like Robert Kennedy or if JFK was able to finish out his term, Robert Kennedy was able to, what would have happened?
So was that RFK Jr.'s dad?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't even know his dad, because he's currently running for president.
Yeah.
So I didn't know his dad was also...
You didn't know that?
Yeah. I never knew that.
Yeah. I'm sure you know RFK Jr. is JFK's
nephew.
Yes.
Yeah, I knew that.
You just didn't... I
never knew his dad tried to run for president.
But you knew... Really? You didn't know...
I didn't know he was assassinated either.
You didn't know Robert was JFK's brother?
I don't even know if I knew of Robert.
Really? I mean, I know this...
What was the other Kennedy who was also killed in a plane crash?
You're talking about JFK Jr. That was JFK's son.
Was it?
Yeah, and that was back in I believe that was the 90s. I can't remember. I can't remember exactly what year.
Yeah.
That I've looked into it at certain times, but it's there's a lot.
Yeah.
They're definitely a political dynasty here in the U.S. There's a lot of them that have, some of it, like their family was
a lot of tragedy.
A lot of tragedy in their family, and but I mean, I think it started with, I can't remember which grandfather it started with, but I think he was, one of the grandfathers was the governor of, was it Massachusetts?
Probably.
I believe. I don't know. It goes deep.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm surprised you don't remember that. I'm sure they taught about Robert Kennedy a little bit in school, but it's one of the things.
I hated history in school, so I didn't.
Yeah, it's one of the things that unless you're really into, you're not necessarily going to remember. And that's like me growing up in school. I really wasn't into history that much. I paid attention enough, but I didn't. I didn't care about remembering stuff. But it wasn't until later on, in my adulthood, especially over the last 5 or so years, I really started getting into history and really started loving learning about this stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of it I did know before that, but I've really, really learned a lot more over the last number of years. But yeah.
Who knows? What we do know is JFK's death caused a massive outpouring of grief and sorrow worldwide, the likes of which haven't been seen since. Wow. And also a very strong desire by many countries to honour his memory and his legacy. Britain was, of course, no exception. In 1965, Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II gifted a symbolic 1 acre of English woodland to the United States to erect upon it a permanent memorial to Kennedy's memory that would stand forever upon U.S. soil as a beacon of free speech, democracy, and hope. The site chosen for the memorial was incredibly symbolic. Runnymede in the English county of Surrey, just west of London. Runnymede is the place where, in 1215, King John reluctantly agreed to the Magna Carta, or Great Charter, paving the way for the idea that kings should have some limitations placed upon their powers, and also be guided by a council of wise men, the latter eventually morphing over hundreds of years into a parliament, and eventually something called representative democracy.
Wow.
The full name of this agreement from 1215 was Magna Carta Libertatum, or Great Charter of Freedoms, the freedoms of the individual against royal power. In the beginning, these freedoms only applied to the barons, who forced the Magna Carta on King John. But
I definitely want to look into that sometime soon. The Magna Carta is something I was taught about that, in school, like everybody to a certain extent. But, again, some of these things, as a kid, you're interested in what you're interested in. And if you're not interested in certain historical facts and stuff like that, you're not going to remember all that stuff the way you would prefer to.
And also, I feel like at least in American school systems, it's about memorizing dates.
Yeah,
and you just cram them in to pass the test.
Right.
And it's not so much about the theories and
that makes me think about something. This is off topic, but I think that schools do an injustice to students when they don't take into account what the student's interest is and try to make it fun for the student. Because if you're having fun with it, if you're loving what you're learning, you're going to remember it.
All right. But I think even beyond that, it shouldn't be about the dates. It should be about...
Dates are important.
They're important, but it shouldn't be the main focus.
Right, I agree. You need the main focus is what happened.
Understanding the point.
The date can easily be found if you know what happened. I totally agree with you with that. Yeah, absolutely.
Over hundreds of years would develop into individual freedoms and rights for all. The Magna Carta is said to have laid the foundations of democracy in the Western world and would go on to heavily influence the American colonists and the formation of the U.S. Constitution. As famous English judge Lord Denning described the Magna Carta, it is, quote, the greatest constitutional document of all times, the foundation of the freedom of the individual against the arbitrary authority of the despot, end quote. Small wonder, then, that the
Hold on, I want to see this. This is where the... Wow. St. John's Preparatory School. Battersea. Interesting. Battersea.
The power station is what I think of.
Yeah. Remember me telling you about that? That's what I'm wondering. But I don't know. Anyway.
Magna Carta Lane.
Wow. This looks like a beautiful spot, man. Wow. And so... Okay, that makes sense how this happened. Queen Elizabeth actually gave a 1 acre plot of land.
That's amazing.
That is amazing. That really is.
That's really touching.
Yeah, that's awesome.
JFK Memorial was placed on land gifted by Britain to America, next to where the Magna Carta was agreed to in 1215. Now, some people are under the misguided notion that the US acre of England at Runnymede is not, in fact, the only US soil in Britain today. What about US air bases, of which there are several
I don't think those are owned by the US,
southern, eastern, and central England? In fact, all of the US bases remain British territory, and in fact belong to the Royal Air Force and are simply loaned to the US for their use, a hang-up from World War II. That's why all US bases in Britain carry the prefix RAF. For example, RAF Mildenhall and RAF Lakenheath. Both of these not too far from where I live.
Royal Air Force, United States Air Force.
Come under US military law and rules, but remain part of Britain. Okay, but what about the US Embassy in London, or the US consulates around?
I want to look into this.
That looks like a very interesting building.
Yeah, I know, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It just looks so...
I wonder what the story is behind that.
Well, it's the embassy. But,
I know, but like, why that design?
Right. It's
symbolic of something.
Yeah, it's like we want to stand out. I don't know, because it is a very interesting looking building.
And Britain, they must be US soil, surely. No, not according to both English law and the US Congress. The embassy or consulate is the territory of the host nation, in this case Britain. But the embassy or consulate represents a sovereign state, in this case the United States, and agreed international diplomatic rules mean that no one can enter the embassy or consulate without permission. An attack on an embassy is designated as an attack on the country it represents. So the land beneath the US Embassy in London remains part of the UK. The JFK Memorial, therefore, at Runnymede is uniquely different from a US diplomatic post or a military base, because the land it stands upon has been gifted in perpetuity to the United States, becoming its sovereign territory. The JFK Memorial is approached up a steep path through a woodland, the pathway constructed out of 60,000 granite sets or small cut stones, representing a huge crowd of people. There then follow 50 steps, one for each US state, that curve up the hillside through the trees to the monument itself. The monument is a 7-ton block of Portland stone, a limestone dating from the Jurassic period. This represents the weight of history that permeates the whole acre. Inscribed upon the face is a dedication to President Kennedy and an excerpt from his famous inauguration speech of 1961.
Every nation know, whether it wishes us well or ill, that we shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe, to assure the survival and the success of liberty.
In front of the stone, the thick branch of a hawthorn tree extends over the path, forcing visitors to slightly bow down. The designer of the memorial, Sir George Jellicoe, chose the hawthorn to represent Kennedy's Catholicism, and behind the hawthorn stands an American scarlet oak that turns a beautiful color in the autumn, or the fall, as the Americans call it, the time when the president was assassinated. Beyond the memorial block is a stone path leading to the seats of contemplation, 2 stone benches that give the seated a view over to where the original Magna Carta was agreed to in 1215. The memorial was unveiled in 1965 by the Queen, the Prime Minister, and Jacqueline Kennedy. The memorial and its acre of land, though belonging to the United States, is administered by the Kennedy Memorial Trust, the U.S. ambassador being one of the trustees, and actually maintained by English Heritage. It is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and is completely free to visit. So there you are, the only piece of England that belongs to America. A beautiful and simple memorial set in the landscape where modern democracy and freedoms had their beginnings. A memorial to one of the greatest advocates of democracy and freedom in history.
For in the final analysis, our most basic common link is that we all inhabit this small planet. We all breathe the same air. We all cherish our children's futures, and we are all mortal.
That's really, really touching. The amount of thought that they put into designing it and the symbology of the things they chose. It was just, it's a beautiful tribute.
I caught myself tearing up, man.
Yeah, I cried.
Doesn't surprise me.
Well, I didn't think I was going to.
It really is very, very moving, though. I mean, you know, for multiple reasons. You know, number one, that you know, Britain, you know, set aside this piece of land in perpetuity for this specific memorial. That just goes to show the you know, the allies, the friendship that the UK and America have.
Yeah.
And also, it's just, you know, I do like John F. Kennedy. You know, I think.
I mean, who couldn't? I don't understand.
Based off everything that I know and have learned about him, I do like him. Yeah. You know, what I know of him. Obviously, that was before my time, so I wasn't around. Right. You know, so. But, you know, the values that, you know, of freedom that he seemed to, you know,
uphold.
Yeah. And seems like
and that's ultimately, I think, what got him killed.
Yeah, I think so. And you know, it seems like that might have been represented on a global, or he might have represented that on a global scale to others around the world. It seems like that I had no idea of. But this is really beautiful, guys, and this is definitely a place that, I mean, it's open 24 hours. It's free to go to. I mean, we would totally drop by here. Just, I mean, like,
yeah, it looks like a very beautiful spot.
Yeah, I mean, like
very
how
peaceful.
But that's shocking, though. Like there's a place in a place in Britain that is technically owned by the U.S. Like, you know, like what's so crazy about that is that. It would have been, you know, it would have been beautiful if they had just, you know, the memorial went up on a piece of land that Britain owned, but they actually went further than that and actually set aside a piece of land that's technically owned by the U.S., which is even further than just a memorial. It's really a special, just a special
act of
solidarity. Solidarity, yeah, that's a good way to put that. Yeah, absolutely. But guys, glad we watched this finally.
Yeah, thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Yeah, this has been on the list for some time now, and you know, glad we finally checked it out. But let us know, guys, if you have any other interesting things like this to share. Please share them in the comments. Can't get to everything all at one time, but believe me, the things you share are bookmarked, and you know, it's very likely that we will get to it at some point. But yeah, thank you so much, guys, for stopping by. You got anything you want to say? All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Please feel free to drop your comments or suggestions about this video. And don't forget to subscribe to continue to follow us on our journey to discover our British and Irish ancestry. Till next time, guys. Peace.
Bye.